Things are getting even more serious, Cassie. Ventura has come forward again. And what she's saying about Diddy is deeply troubling. In this latest update, Cassie is sharing more details about her past with him, and she's not holding anything back. She's speaking out about new incidents of abuse, naming people involved, and shedding light on what really happened behind closed doors, from physical violence to threats of blackmail. She's revealing parts of her story the public hasn't heard before. One of her quotes has gone viral. She called him nasty. It's not just mean. That comment has the internet buzzing. Meanwhile, insiders are worried. And Diddy's team hasn't responded yet. So the big questions are, why is Cassie speaking up again now? What does this new detail mean?
Biggest trial of his life, from those freak-offs to those RICO charges. There's a lot going on in this case, and a lot of witnesses will also be taking the stand. But here to break down the very latest, I want to bring into the conversation legal analyst Nima Rahmani. Nima, thanks so much for being with us here on Night Now from Fox.
Of course, Christina, excited for next week.
And it's been a trial that we've been continuing to follow here over the last few months and really over the last year as those developments have still tried to come into our newsroom. But let's start with the very basics. Something that came out this week. Diddy formally declined the last plea deal that he was offered. Again, we know court is set to begin on Monday. Was this an expected move for him to turn down that final plea offer?
Christina, it was expected. And the judge in the case, Judge Subramanian, asked Diddy, did you decline and reject the government's offer? And the reason is, it's the defendant's right to a speedy trial, and the judge wants to make sure that he is making a knowing and voluntary decision to push the case to trial, because obviously there's a benefit to pleading. Usually you get a reduced sentence. I still think it would be double-digit years in federal prison.
It all began when Cassie was just 19 and met Diddy, who was 36 at the time. That wasn't a mentorship, it was a huge difference in age and power. In 2006. Cassie signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Records. Seemed like the start of something big, but only one album ever came out. Instead of rising to fame, she says she ended up under Diddy's control. He reportedly managed every part of her life, from what she wore to who she could see and when she could work. It wasn't just her music producer, he was in charge of everything. Cassie even moved into one of his apartments. According to her, her phone was watched. And he decided who she could meet or talk to. She said it began like he was mentoring her, calling himself her guide. But things changed quickly and took a much darker turn.
New developments within the past couple hours in the Sean Diddy Combs case.
Defense attorneys are requesting he be released on bail and placed on home confinement. Eyewitness News reporter Annabelle Munoz is here with more on a ruling expected in a matter of days that could lead to his release.
It certainly could, Philip and Ellen, and this is Combs' third request for bail. Two judges have shut down previous efforts, saying there's enough evidence he's a danger to the community to obstruct justice and intimidate witnesses. Today, his attorneys made another case for home confinement. Family members of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs arrived at a federal courthouse in New York as his attorneys urged a judge to release Combs on a $50 million bond. They argued Combs should be placed on home confinement in a 3-bedroom New York City apartment under 24/7 monitoring by full-time security. The prosecution argued Combs nor private security could be trusted to comply with the court. The judge did not immediately rule and says he will have a decision next week. This comes just days after the filing of 5 new civil lawsuits against Combs by men and women.
Court documents reveal that what started as a mentorship between and Diddy slowly turned into something much more troubling. Cassie said she wasn't just silenced as a musician, she was shut down emotionally too. Anytime she spoke up, there were consequences. Even the people around Erminage's assistants, the whole team weren't really on her side. According to Cassie, they all answered to Diddy. Things reportedly got worse once their relationship turned romantic. She said he took control over both her career and her personal life. She didn't get the chance to grow, not as an artist, okay? And not as a person. In her testimony, Cassie said, "He made me feel like I owed him everything. Without him, I felt like I was nothing." Times, she said, it became emotional abuse. She felt completely alone while he held all the money, power, and influence. Cassie shared that he convinced her no one would believe her. And for a long time, no one did. But now, things are changing. Evidence is being revealed and people are starting to listen. That so-called mentorship. It didn't end with controlling her music or image. It went much deeper. In her next testimony, Cassie described something far more disturbing. Something she said started when she was just 22, a part of his private life that she was forced into. Not by choice, but by demand.
In the meantime, let's go back to New York City. Want to get some updates on the case that is unfolding there regarding Sean Diddy Combs. These were the courtroom sketches. Just today, we're turning our attention now there, the sex trafficking case against Diddy and the possible resentencing of the Menendez brothers in Los Angeles. We'll get to that in just a moment here, but let's focus our efforts on New York. We want to get to these headlines in both cases, and we're going to do that with our friend Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst. He joins us. Nima, good to see you, and thanks for being with us here. You were tweeting about the Diddy case today. There was an emergency hearing called this afternoon at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, the judge ordering the prosecution to turn over its findings from a jail cell raid, Diddy's jail cell, just yesterday. What were the contents of those raids?
Well, apparently, according to the defense, they're legal documents. The government's saying no, on the contrary, they're just some handwritten notes and a calendar. And what the judge did, Judge Subramanian, is he ordered the prosecution to destroy their copies.
According to Cassie's testimony, she was pressured into disturbing situations that she described as weekly group encounters. These weren't parties, she said. They were carefully arranged setups involving other people, substances, and cameras. Cassie called them freak-offs. To outsiders, it may have seemed shocking. But to her, it became a painful routine. She shared that before each of these events, she was given various substances, sometimes in drinks, sometimes as pills. She said she was never in control and felt forced to participate. Cassie claimed that Diddy made it clear, if she didn't go along with it, she'd be cut off emotionally and financially. When she resisted, she said he would either shut her out or become angry. These sessions were reportedly recorded. People used fake names and wore masks. Even though the names and faces were hidden, Cassie said the pain she felt was very real. To cope, she said she had to emotionally detach. It became a job, she once said. I didn't even recognize myself anymore. Wasn't about intimacy yet. Was about control. She estimated that these situations happened hundreds of times over almost 10 years. I felt like I was being treated as something to be used, she told the court. But I never saw any of the money. Cassie also shared that even some of the people involved would check on her, asking if she was okay because the pain she carried was that visible, and this was only part of what she experienced. Her story also revealed just how involved drug use became in that environment. Something she said played a major role in everything that happened.
Let's go back to New York City. Want to get some updates on the case that is unfolding there regarding Sean Diddy Combs. These were the courtroom sketches. Just today, we're turning our attention now there, the sex trafficking case against Diddy and the possible resentencing of the Menendez brothers in Los Angeles. We'll get to that in just a moment here, but let's focus our efforts on New York. We want to get to these headlines in both cases, and we're going to do that with our friend Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst. He joins us. Nima, good to see you, and thanks for being with us here. You were tweeting about the Diddy case today. There was an emergency hearing called this afternoon at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, the judge ordering the prosecution to turn over its findings from a jail cell raid, Diddy's jail cell, just yesterday. What were the contents of those raids?
Well, apparently, according to the defense, they're legal documents. The government's saying no, on the contrary, they're just some handwritten notes and a calendar. And what the judge did, Judge Subramanian, is he ordered the prosecution to destroy their copies.
According to Cassie, the use of drugs in her relationship with Diddy wasn't just about control. was also a way to change how she felt and thought. She told the court that she couldn't face what was happening unless she was under the influence. I needed to feel like I wasn't in my body just to get through it, she said. Cassie claimed that Diddy made sure she stayed in that disconnected state. She testified that he regularly gave her substances like ecstasy and painkillers, sometimes directly, sometimes mixed into drinks in some cases. She said doctors who worked for him wrote fake prescriptions using assistants' names. The pills were often stored in vitamin bottles to hide them. It became a routine before events, before trips, and especially before the so-called freak offs. She said he always made sure she had taken something. He told her it would help her relax. But to Cassie, it felt like another way too. Keep her under control. She said she overdosed more than once and would wake up in hospitals with no memory of how she got there. At times, she even lost her sense of smell and taste. That's when she realized the drugs weren't just numbing her, they were causing serious damage. Eventually, she checked herself into a high-end rehab center. That's where she finally began to understand the trauma she had endured. But as she put it, the drugs were only one piece of the puzzle. They were just part of a much larger system of control she was trapped in.
Sean Diddy Combs has been sitting in federal prison for 8 months, and it is a lousy prison. And I got to tell you, there is a world where people look at the indictment against him and look at the case as we know it at this point and say, wow, has this guy been overpunished to this point? But now it will begin in earnest on Monday, okay? And we're going to see whether or not the government has the ability to show charges that will have made it a huge mistake for Combs to not take a deal. Now, what's he charged with? Sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, I got to tell you, most of those are implication crimes, meaning that they're going to say, well, we can't get you specifically for this thing, but we know you were part of this enterprise that was doing this thing. If convicted, he could face life. He probably could have gotten a deal. He didn't want a deal.
Said that the trauma and control became so constant, she forgot what normal life even felt like. I thought feeling broken was just part of the relationship. She once told her therapist and later repeated in court that her healing didn't begin until years after it all ended. But what she shared next made it clear. This wasn't just emotional abuse or manipulation. It was far deeper. She described a life of constant surveillance, isolation, and fear. Cassie testified that Diddy kept her under strict watch around the clock. She said she couldn't leave the house without being followed by security. Her phone and computer use were monitored, and if she broke any rules, his staff would immediately take them away, even during private moments. She said he found ways to stay in control using FaceTime to check in, even during the disturbing encounters she described earlier. According to Cassie, he went even further. She claimed some apartments and hotel rooms were bugged or had hidden cameras. She said there was no such thing as privacy, not even during therapy. It reached a point where she was afraid to whisper about him, worried that somehow it would get back to him. Cassie shared that she started sleeping with a knife next to her bed because she feared for her life. In 2018, she truly believed he might harm her. I was terrified, she said, and I knew no one would believe me if something happened. And the people around them, his assistants, his security team, they weren't just quiet. Cassie said they were part of the system that kept her trapped. At one point, she claimed Diddy threatened to leak private videos if she ever tried to leave. She felt like there was nowhere safe to go, and no one she could turn to.
Jury selection for the criminal trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs started today in New York City. The rapper and producer faces multiple charges, including racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. Prosecutors allege Combs was the mastermind behind a years-long operation to sexually abuse women. He denies any wrongdoing and rejected a plea deal that could have resulted in a lighter sentence. He faces life in prison if convicted. We're joined now by Gina Barton, investigative reporter for USA Today. Thanks for being with us, Gina. So jury selection started today. What are you hearing from your colleagues in the courtroom about how hard it's going to be to find people to serve on this case?
The judge has estimated that it'll only take 3 days to pick a jury, but from how slowly things are going, it may take longer. They're interviewing each juror separately and individually. They have 150 people that they called in. One of them, they spoke to a single person for about 25 minutes. So it could take quite a while to find 12 jurors and some alternates.
Cassie said she truly believed Diddy had the power to ruin her life. He had the footage, the money, and the influence, and she felt completely trapped. It was like living in a house with no doors, she told the court. That's not love, was control, disguised as protection. But things didn't stop at emotional manipulation or surveillance. According to Cassie, it eventually turned physical. She said the violence started in 2009. During a ride in the back of an SUV, Diddy allegedly struck her so hard she collapsed to the floor. That, she said, was the first time, but far from the last. Cassie described both public and private incidents of abuse. One of the worst happened after a major event. She claimed he attacked her so brutally that his own team had to hide the aftermath. She said she was taken to a hotel room to recover, out of sight. The injuries left her with black eyes, a scar above her eyebrow, and other trauma-related health issues. The pain wasn't just in my mind, Cassie said. It was all over my body. And people knew, according to her, Diddy's assistants, his security, even some of the others involved in those past events, they saw what happened. They helped ice my face afterward. She said, this wasn't a secret. It was something people around him witnessed.
Thursday, May 8th. No one's in court, but they will return on Friday, May 9th, and I'll be there as well too. And on Friday, May 9th, they're going to try and cut down this pool of 45 people into 12 jurors and 6 alternates that they need to begin the trial on Monday. Monday is where opening statements start. Monday's date is, because I know people don't watch this in real time sometimes, Monday, May 12th is when opening statements begin in Diddy's trial. Now, yesterday in court, Wednesday, May 7th, there was some issues with the jurors because it's hard to find people that are either not connected to not even just Diddy in the story at this point, but also to some of the attorneys in the room and the judge. So there was one juror that took issue with being selected. He came onto the stand and instantly you noticed, like you would notice in the court, that there was like a kind of like a little key that went down with him and the judge. And it's because he's actually litigated some cases with the judge. So of course, he was dismissed, and the jurors said, like, you know, I wouldn't be comfortable doing this because I think it may make it hard for me to litigate some other cases that I have coming up. So he was dismissed, but then and the judge kind of didn't really.
Cassie said the people around Diddy weren't just bystanders. They were part of the system that kept her trapped. One major piece of evidence now being used in the federal case is hotel security footage showing Diddy forcefully grabbing and dragging Cassie through a hallway at the Intercontinental Hotel. For years, many assumed the rumors about abuse were exaggerated. But now, with video proof in the courtroom, the reality is much harder to ignore. Deeply disturbing, Cassie's testimony paints a picture of a relationship where violence wasn't an occasional outburst. It was constant. She said Diddy would lose his temper without warning, and people around them acted like it was normal. She described being in visible pain in public, and no one stepped in to help. That kind of silence, she said, made them complicit. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, Cassie shared how she was allegedly kept under control through blackmail. She said Diddy recorded everything, private moments, intimate encounters, all stored on laptops, iPads, and backup drives. But they weren't just personal files. According to her, they were used as threats. Whenever she tried to leave, he would allegedly remind her of what he had. One time, she said, he told her, "You'll have to answer to your mom when the world sees this." On one flight, she said he opened his laptop midair and played the videos just to show he was still in control. Then he demanded intimacy. "He made sure I knew I couldn't leave without the world seeing me at my lowest," Cassie told the court.
The criminal trial for Sean Combs is set to begin tomorrow in New York with jury selection. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including sex trafficking, and has denied all civil allegations against him. Now, sources say Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, will be a central witness during the trial. Now, sources also tell CNN other witnesses expected to testify include his former sexual partners, a business associate, and a male sex worker. Joining me now to discuss is trial attorney and former senior assistant District Attorney Otto Ekpo. Thank you for being here. Can you just put into perspective how significant this case is?
This is a very, very significant case. I like to akin this to, this is the Gen Z's, I guess, version of the O.J. Simpson trial.
Wow.
I was in 5th grade whenever the O.J. verdict came out, and I remember my teacher stopping trial, or stopping the court, stopping our courtroom just for us to figure out what's going on. We got to figure out what's happening with this verdict. What's different in this particular case than the O.J. Simpson trials, that this is not going to be live streamed.
Yeah.
You know, in federal court, you can't live stream any type of court at all. You can't live stream any trials. And so your audience is really going to have to focus on how CNN is kind of letting them know how the trial.
She shared that shame was one of the biggest reasons she stayed silent hand. That's exactly how the control worked. It wasn't just about threats. She said Diddy once told her straight out, "You're not going anywhere. I'll ruin you." And she believed him. He had the power, the legal team, the PR experts, and she had no one of her own. Even after they ended their relationship, she said her life was still being controlled. Her assistants, her staff, they were all working for him, not her. Cassie described it as living with psychological handcuffs, even when she walked away. The fear that he might release something damaging kept her quiet for years. "I was treated like an object," she testified. And shame was used as a weapon now for the first time. She's stepping forward and speaking her truth. And she's not alone. Cassie's story opened the door for others women, assistants, even male staff members who say they witnessed or experienced similar things. Some were hit, others silenced, and some are still afraid to speak up. But a few have started to come forward. Former assistants like Gary Morgan and Christina Carorum were named in court documents. Cassie said they weren't just witnesses, they were victims too. In one instance, Diddy allegedly assaulted Carrie. During preparations for one of those disturbing events Cassie previously described, it wasn't only women either. Cassie said a male staff member once got punched for bringing the wrong outfit. In another moment, Diddy allegedly threatened a woman by holding her over a balcony during an argument. It was constant chaos, Cassie said. You never knew who would be next. These things didn't happen in secret. They happened in front of people who knew him, worked with him, and stayed quiet. Even some of the escorts involved reportedly whispered to Cassie after those events, asking, "Are you okay?" The silence around her was loud, but now, the truth is starting to come out.
Begins this morning in the federal criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Prosecutors accuse the former music mogul of abusing, threatening, and coercing people into what they say were elaborate and produced sex performances that were known as freak-offs.
Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. If convicted, he could face life in prison.
For more, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos, who joins us here on set. So the presiding judge hopes to have a jury in 3 days, given how well known Combs is. How realistic is that?
Well, all bets are off now that in the last 2 years, Donald Trump was tried here in Manhattan, just a few feet away from this courthouse. And Donald Trump is arguably the most famous or infamous person in human history. And they seated a jury in state court in a matter of 2 or 3 days. Judge Subramanian can probably seat a jury in this case in 3-4 days. I don't think any more than a week. It moves much faster in federal court than it does in state court. So you can expect a jury by the end of the week.
Even women who were hired to be there could sense something wasn't right. They could see it in my eyes, Cassie told the court. But no one could speak up. Everyone was afraid of Diddy. One name that came up again and again was Troke, Diddy's longtime security guard. Cassie said after violent episodes, he'd quietly hand her ice packs as if it were just part of his job. Time to ice up. He would text her after those events, she said. This became routine. According to Cassie, everyone around him helped keep it quiet: assistants, security, even stylists. The system protected Diddy, but no one was protecting her, and the damage didn't stop there. Cassie said Diddy didn't just control her physically, he also shut down her future. She had talent, she had music, but her career never had a real chance. Because, according to her, he made sure of that too. What started as a record deal turned into a silent stream. Cassie had a voice and a sound people loved. Many still remember her hit, Me and You. But that was supposed to be just the beginning. She said she wrote hundreds of songs, but most never got released. Diddy allegedly delayed her music, shelved her projects, kept telling her to focus on being an icon, which in her words, was just another way of saying, stay under my control. Her former manager, James Cruz, even said it felt like trying to manage someone with one hand tied behind his back. Every decision needed Diddy's approval. Want to release a song? Ask Diddy. Want to do a show? Ask Diddy. Cassie said she couldn't say yes to anything, not even her own career opportunities, without his permission. And when she tried to earn money on her own through club appearances, hosting gigs, or brand deals, she claimed he blocked those too.
It might be unsavory in some folks' eyes. They were not non-consensual. And because of that, they were not criminal acts.
You know, there's been also a lot of discussion about whether Sean Diddy Combs himself will take the stand. You know, defense teams often shy away from that, even if, you know, someone is very keen on, you know, sharing their perspective, their truth. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think that he is not going to take the stand?
Yikes. You know, I would absolutely advise him not to take the stand, in part because there's so much impeachment material that he would be confronted with while on the stand. Look at the Cassie video in and of itself. You know, the prosecutor would walk through that in painstaking detail and say, hey, is this you, you know, kicking your girlfriend in the stomach while she's on the ground? Is this you dragging her by her hair? Don't you understand that that could cause pain to somebody or cause them to be intimidated? Was that part of your design all along? All of these questions could be damning for Diddy, and I doubt that he would take this.
Didn't just try to control her. He wanted her completely dependent. He wanted me broke so I couldn't leave, she testified. And even when he did give her money for things like rent, clothes, or cars, it always came with strings attached. Every time she pushed back, he reminded her of what he had done for her. Her music career wasn't just slowed down, it was completely blocked. For nearly a decade, Cassie stayed stuck in place, while other artists released songs, performed, and grew. She remained silent and not by choice. People on the outside thought maybe she'd stop trying, but now we know that wasn't true. She was being held back. She said music was used as a form of control, not creativity. It was never about the art, Cassie told the court. It was about power. Despite all the silence, fear, and pressure, Cassie eventually found her way out. It took years, but she finally broke free. What followed was a turning point. A private meeting. A $20 million lawsuit. Now, a federal trial that has everyone paying attention. And this might just be the beginning. The latest wave of accusations. Has people asking big questions? How long has this been happening? Who else knew? Cassie's story isn't just about hurts revealing what might be a much larger pattern. Every time she shares more people come forward. More details emerge. And Diddy's carefully built image continues to crack. This isn't about getting back at someone. It's about finally being free now. All eyes are on the courtroom. So what do you think? Is this the start of the end for Diddy, or the beginning of a bigger reckoning? Let us know your thoughts, because this story is far from over.